I'm joined now by David Craig, co-chair of the Task Force on Nature-Related Financial Disclosures, and Professor Nicola Ranger, Executive Director, Earth Capital Nexus, and co-lead for Nature, the LSE's Global School of Sustainability. Look, thanks to both of you for coming in. I mean, I'm glad that this nature piece is such a prominent part of the show today because it's so critical. Where are we now, Nicola? Have we... David and I talked about this last year. How much progress has been made over the past 12 months since London Climate Action Week last year?
Well, very significant. So our work is all about putting nature into the economic and financial terms that financial institutions and governments need. And on that, the level of understanding in the financial sector has increased significantly. And we're now seeing them moving from understanding risk to really looking at how can they actually invest in this area and actually build that into their decision.
And are we seeing, really properly seeing capital being mobilised? Enough capital being mobilised?
I think, definitely not enough
definitely
capital.
Definitely
not enough. So, looking at the big finance numbers on this, we're seeing 7.3 trillion going into things that are destroying nature versus only 220 billion going into things that are positive for nature. So we want to see those numbers flipped over.
And this is, we're talking here about the protection versus the harvesting argument, is that right?
Yes.
Making money from harvesting nature, or are you talking about the destruction of nature?
Well, so I think a big part of this agenda is not just financing more conservation, so that's part of it, but it's also about looking at how can we make our critical supply chains more nature positive, for example, because that's one of the biggest destroyers of nature around the world. Like all our critical minerals, our food, are being done in ways that at the moment are destroying nature and actually undermining themselves, so shooting themselves in the foot.
Are you feeling optimistic, David?
We're past a tipping point. We're now seeing a conversation changing. You and I talked about this a couple of years ago about why this should be done. Companies and investors are now talking about how they're doing it. We've seen reporters and assessors grow by 50% this year on assessing how nature is in that P&L, as Nicola said. My 7 trillion of harm is because everything we consume is either grown or we extract from the ground. So we're now seeing so many companies doing this and investors. I think the debate is switching into how are we doing it, what are we learning, and what decisions are we taking?
And what do you, I mean, I know, again, this is something you and I have talked about, the nature technology and the opportunity there. I mean, what are some of the most exciting ways in which this is being proven now and being done now?
Well, the technology is changing and innovating all the time, as we know, but companies are now really looking at a number of areas of their impacts, their dependencies, and looking at how can I reduce resources. Take a really simple one. Can I be more efficient on how I use water? Look at a company like Ecolab in the US worth 70 billion, trading at 34 times multiple. I mean, that is a unicorn times multiple times over that is investing in nature harm reduction. But there are many, many other technologies, everything from electronic circuit board recycling to waste treatment to creating new products from waste products you'd have just put in landfill before. So people are really starting to look at their entire inputs and outputs and think, well, where can I reduce resource? Where can I reuse? Where can I shift that 7 trillion and stop doing as much harm, but actually get benefit at the same time as well?
And look, you've got a finance background, David, and you wear that finances hat. Are they seeing the opportunity where they can make good money in this space? Go ahead.
Well, one thing I would say, so the biggest private financiers of nature in the UK are water companies, because they see nature as an essential infrastructure. It is providing flood mitigation, it's providing free water quality mitigation. So all of these services that are being provided, and there is billions going into the space from water, but we're also now seeing, as you mentioned, those big companies like Mars, for example, we just interviewed recently, in United Utilities in the water space, big energy companies that are actually putting real money into this because they see it as essential for their resilience as businesses.
I mean, some of the corporates, the water companies, the energy companies, what about the banks? And what about the fund managers who are looking for opportunities, growth opportunities and money-making projects? What are you seeing there?
So let's talk about the risk and the opportunity equation. They are absolutely looking at this from a risk lens. They are looking at their portfolios and trying to understand in the companies where is the risk on ecosystem services that is not quantified and not there. They really want to understand that. We've seen 30 of the world's largest asset managers all say in their stewardship guidance, we want nature to be assessed. We want to use TNFD. We want you to really understand this. So they're really now focused on this and making sure.
They're good at talking the talk, though, aren't they? I mean, when you actually say to them, okay, look, put your money where your mouth is, what happens then?
Well, it is shifting. We've seen large asset managers shift their portfolio, make allocation decisions based on nature. What was really interesting, we now have 800 reporters. They're in the public domain. We sampled what are they actually doing as a result of this assessment. 40% said they're changing strategy, either procurement, locations, materials, new products. That's a big number. I mean, that is a large percentage of these companies are saying we're implementing change. Now, we're starting, right? Let's not pretend 7 trillion is going to disappear overnight and all become nature positive. But we are starting, we're seeing the technologies, seeing investors. We're seeing banks now input nature risk into their credit and lending models. I mean, that's a big break forward. These are large multinational banks that are starting to do that. So I think it is starting and we're learning.
Okay, so you talked about the tipping point at the beginning. When's that next tipping point? When do we then get to the next level we need to be at, do you think?
I think the next level is when we start to reclassify nature tech as an investment opportunity.
Okay.
So far, a lot of nature investments and nature funds have focused on restoration and preservation. Really good. Need more of it. But we won't solve this just through bees and trees. We need nature tech in core industrial processes to be an investment class as well.
Go ahead, Nicola.
Well, for me, I think so. Part of it is about this nature as infrastructure story. So, nature. It seems crazy to me that in the UK, we put so much emphasis on infrastructure as important to our growth. But we miss that actually nature is just as vital as roads, energy systems. So I think a tipping point for me is when governance recognises this as a critical infrastructure.
Do the policymakers get it?
So yes and no. So I think they get it and they get the opportunity. I think they still don't get that actually this is essential for our growth in the UK, but also overseas. We just showed some research this week we launched. 1 trillion of dependencies just on rainfall from forests around the world.
Yeah.
1 trillion. Yeah. That's just in Europe. Another trillion in China. Another trillion in the US. This is massive. And if that gets undermined, it undermines everything. And as you say, some of the big asset owners are getting this. So we work with Norges Bank Investment Management, and they see this as critical for the risk across their portfolios.
All right, guys, I've got to stop it there. Thank you so much for coming in to Nicola and to David.